Alright, so this is a bit of an off-the-cuff video. I'm not getting my other microphone out. I'm just running the headset in the way it is, and we're just going to kind of go down and just talk some Counter-Strike, and more so game theory, and more so me just walking you through exactly what I did to win another Counter-Strike contest, just because there's no good like CSGO content out there. And this isn't just like backing up of like, oh, the picks told me this or that. Like I want to go through and explain everything I did to come to the conclusions that I did to go ahead and build lines and stuff, and we'll talk about through that, or we'll talk about that as we kind of go through the video. So you need context, and you need to know what is going on in Counter-Strike. I hate to say it, like if you don't understand the teams, you're at a pretty big disadvantage, in my opinion. I think Counter-Strike and League of Legends to an extent, but League of Legends you have more players and more roster spots to worry about. But Counter-Strike and other showdown contests are pretty exploitable if you remove projections. Now, I know that sounds like really dumb to do, and it sounds pretty backwards. But whether you're doing NBA showdown, whether you're doing NFL, NASCAR to an extent, or Counter-Strike, even though NASCAR doesn't have the 1.5 multiplier captain position, it's still very similar, which is why I enjoy. And F1, and F1 falls in this category very much so as well. If you have the basic knowledge of what's going on, that's going to help you tremendously, because a lot of the times I would encourage you to throw projections out the window. I don't fully believe that projections matter a ton. Ownership is the category that you need to be able to predict the most, and you need to be the most aware of. Yes, projections are good to have a baseline of what somebody's going to do. You need to have an idea, but it's truly not the end-all be-all. That comes into play like once you start running an optimizer, and you need people to get thrown in correctly about what they're roughly going to project for. But you need so many other starting like stepping stones before that. So let's go over the CSGO slate today, and then we'll talk about projections and stuff, or we'll talk about results and stuff. So on the 11th of August, earlier this month, the Thunderpick World Champion semifinals, pretty sure it was semifinals, slate was on DraftKings. And as we get later in the year, I play less and less Counter-Strike unless I just really like the slate. But typically, because I have quite a lot of knowledge of Eternal Fire, Xantares is teams. He was with Big for several years, and Xantares is a Turkish player, and there really wasn't like a big powerhouse Turkish team, and so he went ahead and left Big, and him and some other guys that he knows formed Eternal Fire, which is the big Turkish organization out of Turkey. An issue with Xantares that we always saw a lot, and if you ever watch any of my Counter-Strike stuff, I always say, even now, with a whole new generation or iteration of Big Clan, but Big has always had an issue of not being able to clutch situations, of choking, and their players not performing like in like really important situations. They're really volatile, but almost more volatile towards not performing well. Like that happens way more than it should. Xantares is a great example of that. This guy knows what he's doing. He's a fantastic player. If you look at his all-time like stat lines and stuff, incredible rating all time. If you just look back at the past 3 months, incredible player. But he just chokes a lot. The guy is just bad. Okay, he is not simple. He's not Zywoo. He's not Device. Especially when we're looking at Tier 2 Counter-Strike, okay, I don't understand why ownership centers around people like Xantares when the same way it centers around people like Zywoo in Tier 1 with Vitality, Simple with Navi, Device with Astralis. I can't think of anybody else right now for any other team, but those are the examples that I would use. Like, those guys are clearly the best players on the team that will almost never falter. Like, it is so incredibly rare for those three individuals that I just mentioned to have bad games. Like, their bad games are still great games for, like, the normal player. Xantares is not one of those. He has Woxic on his team. He has several other guys on his team that can outscore him. And there's a lot of times where Xantares can underperform. Okay, and so having that knowledge of who's playing is is huge. You need to understand that stuff. At least I would advise you to try and understand that stuff before you get into whatever sport you're doing. I think you don't necessarily need knowledge on the sport to get into it, but it certainly helps. And like, what are these fucking ads, brother? What are we doing here? Oh my lord. Anyway, so these guys played here. And as everybody knows, I like playing very aggressive with my lineups. I have no issues playing near 100% people, going all in on people, having very high percentage of players in whatever I'm doing. Because typically whenever it works out, it makes up for all the times that it doesn't work out. I'm just perfectly fine with that. I'm very aggressive in that sense if I don't diversify my lineups. They're all very much identical lineups, just with slight changes, like literally 1-for-1 trades in lineups and stuff. So they're either all going to do great or they're all not to. So when we looked at this game here, this was the contest for that, okay? And this was 500 Mouse Esports and Eternal Fire versus Monty. Now, this is a situation where there's two games. There's a clear favorite in one of the games, okay? We had Mouse, on this date. We had 00 Nation today, okay? When it's a two-game slate, and you have one distinct team that should absolutely knock the pants off the other team, the highest score, your captain, will most likely come from that team. That's just what it's going to be. When it's a situation like Eternal Fire, and Monty, whatever team scores well, yes, their Opera is probably going to be the highest scoring player, but he's probably not going to outscore the secondary Opera on the team that is gigantic favorites over it. Now, there's different nuances and stuff, and we'll talk about both these contests. There's different nuances. You can have a bad 2-0 to where, like, you just both teams, it's basically like a 16-14 on both games, to where you don't really get the bonus on the team. Like, also, secondary, like, just like how I play Daytona lineups, like I always stack from the back, I always play 3-man lineups. I just always do that. It personally hasn't been profitable for me, or it makes sense to me to not build that way. I always team stack in Counter-Strike. That's just what I do. So I typically find the one team on one game I want to stack, and the one team on the other team I want to stack. And typically I usually just find the one guy I want to be 100% on in the captain position. Anyway, I guess I could export this to the CSV, but I'm just doing this off the cuff, so I don't really want to do that. When we look at what Xanterra's ownership is, and I want to emphasize that Eternal Fire and Monty are very similar teams. Like, these games are absolute coin flips. Eternal Fire has been a slight favorite in all three of the games, or all three of the matches I'm about to talk about, but we're talking about like a minus 144, minus 180. I mean, these are like slim margins. This is not, like in League of Legends, you'll see like a minus 1600. In some Counter-Strike games, you'll see like a minus 800, a minus 1000. These are minus a 100 games. I don't understand why that isn't being considered as much as it is. Let's talk about this ownership real fast. I'm just going through. Let's look at let's look at the top scoring line here. Ron Boy, shout out to you for taking us down. So we have Xanterra's at he's 7600. Clearly, if he's going to score well, he's going to be the captain. But when we look at what this ownership is doing between Eternal Fire and actually these are both. Sorry, hold on. I need to find one that has. Eternal Fire, guys, so I can make this. Okay, so we see that Eternal Fire, Xanterra's, because he's the Opera, he's the main guy. Most projections are going to love him as the highest projected scorer on the slate. We see him at 71%. We see Woxic, his teammate, at 55%. We see their teammate at 26%. I can't pronounce that. But this doesn't make sense to me. And we're talking about a slate that happened, roughly a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, because Xanterra's and Eternal Fire are not like huge favorites. They have a lot of issues with their organization, and when you look at the match on how it played out on the 11th of August, these are games that Eternal Fire got so lucky on. They won on winning rounds alone. They were not the better team. They did not deserve the win. This was a complete luck win. First off, the first game goes into fucking OT, okay, at Vertigo. But when we look at what these teams do in Vertigo on overtime, and this is a comeback for Monty to bring it even, 15-15 for them to go into overtime, and then Eternal Fire closes it out. But this was like a blowout, pretty big comeback here. But when we look at the Vertigo match, the more kills, or the guys with the most kills, are on Monty. Now, it is very rare that you're going to have the losing team of a map have the two highest kill guys on the server. 34 kills, 26 kills. That's higher than anybody on Eternal Fire. And everybody else on Monty was pretty even with Eternal Fire. This was just a game to where Eternal Fire won it, but this was not a runaway game. And this is specifically not a runaway game on a captain position that you want. Okay? This is where you look at the different. This is why I'm saying, like, projections. You need to understand them. You need to have an idea of what's happening. But there's so many things that come into play that I think get in the way. Like, this is a bad scoring. This is a bad score for all these guys in terms of DraftKings points, because these guys are expensive. Walk's certainly expensive. He's scoring terrible. We're not seeing the drastic high scoring from Xanteras, and we're seeing that. When we look at detailed statistics, you're also going to see, like, the amount of assists and stuff. Like, we want assists, we don't flash assists. Like, look at all these assists that these guys are carrying. Yes, it's very similar to that's the first map. That's both maps. When we look at Vertigo, look at all these assists. Look at all these kills. Like, these guys are outscoring Eternal Fire. It's so rare that you have the losing team outscore somebody. But that's because Monty was the fucking better team. When we go to the second map, it just, Monty's tired, they lost an OT, they made it close, but they weren't able to do that. But you look at the second map as well, like, this was a game to where Monty was the fucking better team. They just lost because Eternal Fire won with Counter-Strike rounds. But in terms of daily fantasy sports, in terms of fantasy scoring, you need to understand, and I'm not just using Monty for this example, but you need to look at every game, and if you pay attention, if you go through and look at how these teams play, you're going to see that teams are able to or not teams, but you need to see how players are scoring in situations. Like, how are they losing rounds? How are they not winning rounds? What's going on? And Monty's a team that is going to almost always outscore their opponents, fantasy-wise, although it might not be reflected in, like, the odds or whatever. So, in this contest, as I said, Mouse just blew out 500, so it doesn't even matter. So the Eternal Fire Monty contest is what happened here. And so, as I'm viewing here, I'm like, Mouse is going to kill 500. I assume, because this is just what happens, and we'll talk about the contest today, people play Eternal Fire a lot. That's just what happens when they're on the slate. People play Eternal Fire. You click on Xanteras and you see his scores. Like, these are not justifiable for like 9,000, 8,000. Like, what are these? This is way too expensive. This doesn't make any sense. But, slate by slate basis, he's going to project the highest on, like, whatever site you're using. And so a lot of people end up using him. He's at 71% here. When I look at how I approach this slate, it was very much, I want to go 100% frozen. He's going to score well. Tortsy's going to score well, and then whoever else is left with 3 man for Mouse is going to, we're most likely to see Shushi get moved out, Zeron. And anyway, so I built this specifically with, the Mouse in there, and I don't want to play the Eternal Fire guys. I want to play the Monty guys because they have a really high chance of scoring well. And this is just a situation where I got blown out of the water because Eternal Fire got the bonus, the map sweep bonus, which is huge. Like, you absolutely need to target that. As I was saying, there's good and bad ways to get a 2-0. A bad way to get a 2-0 is if both matches go like 16-14, because you're minimizing your rounds not played bonus, and you're maximizing the amount of times that your players can usually get killed. Like, for somebody to do well, you want a high KD ratio. Well, if you're playing every round of each match, that means you're going back and forth. Teams are saving, teams are not saving. There's a good chance that your guys are getting killed a lot in those rounds. So the upside of having a high KD ratio is lowered because you're playing every round. There's a higher chance that he's dying. When you have a team win a match 16-7 or 16-5, you have a high part of that game not being played. That's where the rounds not played bonus comes through. I mean, that's for everybody for not playing the round of the match, whenever it ends. But that's huge as well. When you're targeting 2 zeros, you need to target people who are going to prioritize the map sweep bonus, and you need to prioritize teams that are most likely going to blow them out of the water. Now, caveat with this, like teams like Vitality, Navi, yet again Astralis, which is why I focus on those teams a lot, they can have very close 2-0 games, but they're normally just slugging it out. Like, I mean, not slugging it out. The Opera, Zywoo, Device, Simple. I wish I could think of other teams right now, but I can't. Well, Frozen 2, for an example, is a guy who has a high likelihood of being just the top scorer, and the guy most likely getting 2 to 3 kills every single round. So even if that game goes, 16-14, there's a good chance that he's making up for the rounds not played bonus, and he's probably not dying a lot. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this that you can't. Projections don't matter. I used to try and make projections, and very similar to my NASCAR stuff, I would just do like a hard cutoff at a point, and it would work, but I just threw it out of the way at a certain point. Anyway, so this was this one, which was I was shocked to see the ownership this low. Like, everybody identifies that Wario is a good play. DamQQ is a good play. We're seeing like pure misprices here. Like, if you got a guy this cheap scoring near 50, near 60 a lot, like, I just don't understand the ownership here. But anyway, we look at the Monty ownership, and I knew for a fact that they're just not played. They're not played enough. If this is a coin flip match, why is nobody on the Monty side? Why is it all Eternal Fire? I don't get that. Well, it has to be due to the optimizers. It's due to projections. The projections are going to favorite Eternal Fire far more than they're going to when I go to Monty. That's just what it's like. That's what it is. Now, entering the game today, there is a match between these two teams that were not on DraftKings. At least I'm not aware of, or I didn't play it or whatever. I don't remember it being on DraftKings. But these teams met again a couple days later. So they played on this was the 11th of August game. That was on DraftKings. This one was not on DraftKings. And hey, Monty beat Eternal Fire. When you look at how these guys did, you're seeing again that, let me go back, pretty close match, bit of a blowout, just because they're so good on Vertigo. And then this last map, very, very close. Like, these are super close matches, okay? When we're looking at how guys are scoring, when we look at all maps, let's go to detailed statistics, because you need to also, this isn't including like 4Ks, 1v1 or 1v2 clutches, aces, all that. All I look at on here is I just want to see kills and assists that these guys are getting. And we're seeing that Monty is clearly outscoring. Now, I understand he's not outscoring Kata, where the fuck his name is. But we're seeing that Xantares is like, why is he being projected to be the highest scorer on Eternal Fire, or even on the slate? He's very mid when it comes to, like, as I said, rating wise, he's great IRL, but fantasy, there's a lot of worries about Xantares and other players like that I just projections don't take into account, optimizers don't take into account. And when we entered the match today, it was very similar. Like, we know that Eternal Fire is going to want to play Vertigo. This is like their best map, okay? You're not going to beat Eternal Fire in Vertigo. It's very hard to do that, but this is the map today. And so, yet again, we go to Vertigo, and we look at Eternal Fire and how they're playing, and we see that Xantares is owned. I guess I could do this. I'll bring it over here. Now, I understand people are gonna be like, "Is it even official?" You get late updates and stuff. It's already changed like 3 times. Don't worry. And besides, if it does change and I don't win this, the video is not gonna be up. So don't worry about that. But when we look at, I gotta go down. I just gotta find. Also, I had every single line because I just play very aggressive. But I'm looking for a Xantares line to have in here to show you that I just don't. So, yet again, when running simulations, whatever the case may be, this was identical situation today to what it was 2 weeks ago. Eternal Fire and Monty, with Mouse as the clear favorite who's going to win. Same thing here. Eternal Fire and Monty, with 0-0 Nation, the clear favorite to win over Bad News Eagles. Yet again, I don't know if it's I looked at projections on SaberSim, and they had 0-0 Nation and Bad News Eagles pretty even, to where that's just not what it's going to come down to. The players are playing much better in 0-0 Nation. It's a brand new team, but it's a team like Nico's a fantastic player. I just went blank the other guys on 0-0 Nation, but it was the Opera from Big Clan again, ironically enough. But they're just better players over Bad News Eagles, especially on online matches. But this was, I mean, a lot of people want to talk about simulations and stuff. There's just like a 1-to-1 ratio of what happened last week to now. And so when I looked at this one here and I looked at how I approached it, I was like, I'm going to get very low ownership on Monty over Eternal Fire because this is an identical situation. I know what the projections were wanting to do 2 weeks ago. I know what they're saying now. So I made lines. I wanted to go and see what type of lineups people would end up making. It was most likely Xanterra's captain. It was most likely a lot of Eternal Fire. It was very little. You'd have like Damn QQ in there and stuff, but it was going to be very little Monty, and it was going to, because people were having to pay up for Xanterra's and Woxic and stuff, it was probably going to be a very low chance of having Syrian, I just went blank on how to pronounce his name, in the captain position, or paying up for the guys in 0-0 Nation, despite the fact that they're clear favorites and stuff. So when I was looking at what this field did today, you know, and no offense to you, OC Mojo, I'm just clicking on names to get something. We see that Xanterra's had 78 today. We see that he had, let's find, where he at? We see that he was at 71. We see that, and I know there's like easier ways to do this, but I just don't really give a shit. We see Woxic 57. We see Woxic, where are you at? Guess where I saw Woxic. Oh yeah, we see Woxic 56. So, because Counter-Strike has a 20-player pool in a 2-game, you can only have 3 of each team. You should be eliminating the 5 guys from the losing teams. If you project them to lose, you should just remove them from the pool. That's how I play. Okay, typically that's going to work out because as you have, you know, you start with 10 players, winning team, losing team, and map 1. Typically you're going to have those 5 be at the top of the score, and you're going to have the bottom 5 from the losing team be at the bottom. You might have like the highest scoring player from the losing team scores higher than the lowest scoring player from the winning team, but that's typically how it goes. And then that happens again with the second match. You have the winning team, you have the losing team, and they join the standings of DraftKings points based on where these guys were in the first team. And so, if you can only have 3 players from each team, then you have the 2 winning teams up here sharing positions or sharing the top. Then it's just whoever, you need to nail whoever's the highest scoring guy, but past that it's just whatever works money-wise. If both teams go 2-0, or both teams, the winning teams, are the highest scoring guys of each map, because you can only have 3 of those guys. And so your pool should just be the fucking 10 players from the winning teams if you project them to win. Anywho, as we talked about with plate racing, as we talked about with other situations, ownership is huge. Like, that is the true end-all be-all of fantasy, and that's what I focus on the most. In every sport, I try and focus on what the ownership is going to be on players, and specifically in situations where I don't agree if they're going to be the highest scoring, or understanding why do they work in this situation and not the other situation, yada yada yada. And so we saw very similar ownership on the Eternal Fire guys compared to what it would be the last time, and we see that Xanterra's, as I mentioned, this was today, but this is what he scored. Like, his price tag of 86, he needs to be scoring in the 70s consistently. And he can't have down days. He cannot have down days. This was not an outlier, because in this first map in Vertigo 2 weeks ago, on Vertigo, Xanterra's, this was all late in this game because we went to overtime, but Xanterra's had a negative KD ratio. Like, he was not performing well at all in this game, and there's really nobody picking up the slack, but that is huge for your highest owned guy. And so, anyway, today was very, very similar. He had a good first game because they play Vertigo, that's where they're going to win. Had a really middling game 2, and map 3 really hurt Xanterra's because he was just getting killed a lot. And I just didn't agree with, first off, how big of a favorite the projections were saying Xanterra's was. Now, that's not a hit against SaberSim, because everything, like the data, sportsbook and stuff, like when you go in and look at like HLTV and you look at how DraftKings like prices people, like yeah, that's right. Xanterra should be that based on the data, but like eye testing, eye watching, like that, I just figured that wouldn't be the case and stuff. So I didn't want to play Xanterra's. I didn't want to play Eternal Fire, and Monty was underpriced, and they are consistent. They're a team very similar to Heroic, to where all 5 players are like really good. Like any player can be the top scorer, which is very difficult to play that team and find a captain from that team, because the variation between how those 5 guys are going to perform is drastically different. That's why 0-0 Nation, you want to find the opera that's most likely to be the most consistent scorer and probably the safer of the scores. Anyway, I know I'm bouncing around, but this is all that I was doing. And so when I built my lines, or when I was messing with stuff last night and this morning, now this isn't on, like, I don't have this on the Patreon as something that you'll get every single time that you'll like. I don't like writing stuff down, because then I have to like always do it. Like everything written down on the Patreon is what I like guarantee. Like I guarantee the projections for NASCAR the morning of the race. But there's other things I do in my Discord that I don't have on there, because sometimes I'm not always going to do it, or sometimes I can do it here if I'm playing this, but I'm not doing that. So I made just a read-only channel for you guys that I just type my notes in. So I've been writing notes for like preseason stuff, preseason NFL, just other random things that aren't the sport that you guys pay me to cover, or you pay to see my projection stuff, but maybe you still want an idea of what I do, or so on and so forth. And so even last night and this morning, I had written down, or I posted my exposure, at 7:57 this morning, and just being like, hey, this is where I'm going to go for the CSGO slate today. And I had something come up, and I came back, and I was typing this, but I had something come up, and then I was like, look, Eternal Fire is the favorite against Monty, but it's like a true coin flip, but nothing is reflecting it. Also, this is why I wouldn't write articles. Like, I would never write DFS articles, because it would be like 7 sentences, and it would be exposure. Like, that's it. There's no reason to do anything more than that. That's why, like, shout out to any poor sap out there writing fucking CSGO content, because nobody fucking reads it, and it's not even worth anything. But basically, I was explaining everything I just explained in this video, and just Eternal Fire, the ownership is going to be through the fucking roof for like no reason. And as I said in the last game, which people really pay attention to on a niche sport like this, you do pay attention of what happens in the games, what happens in the slates and everything like that. I was just like, it's going to be identical. It's an identical situation. You have to take advantage of it. You need to understand what happened in the first game. And so I went back and I looked, and I was like, okay, so what was my ownership on stuff in this last game? What went wrong here? Because as you can see, all I did was 3 guys for Monty, 3 guys for Mouse, and I was like, what? I wish the Roto Grinders thing would work, because then I could show you how much ownership or how much salary I had left over. But I was very happy with the builds. I was very happy with how everything went. I was very happy with how Monty scored. It was just a shame that Eternal Fire got the 5-point sweep bonus in a situation where they really didn't deserve it, A very similar contest, too. This was, 941 guys. We have the contest today that didn't even fill, that had overlay, but roughly 974 guys. And I figured it's really going to be very, very similar. And that's mainly what I did. When we look at the show all, you're going to see how I'm going to assume a lot of this stuff was optimizers. I want to give some shout outs real fast to names that I recognize here. Like Reformed Racer, he's a fantastic DFS player. He knows what he's doing. He diversifies a lot. I've looked at a lot of his lineups too. He's almost always up there. I don't remember other guys. I remember their images on the phone way more than the names. But anyway, there's a lot of guys in here that know what they're doing, and there's a lot of people in here that I have to imagine they either don't know what they're doing, or they just run whatever optimizer they're using once and do it. Because whenever a slate opens, I don't really like pulling the CSVs, just because I'm bad in... Hold on. Alright, sorry about that. I'm coming back to this later. I had to stop the recording midway through the last one, and I'm having to render two together. Real quick, guys, gals, everybody out there, I had to stop it because I was getting yelled at through the wall. First and foremost, if you guys are in an abusive relationship, you guys need to get the fuck out. Secondly, if there's just red flags in the relationship, if you're trying to keep a relationship alive that you should have just let go a long time ago, just let it go. Thirdly, and this is big old number 3, for anybody who does this as a content creator, anybody who does this full time for an income or for a side income, whatever the case is, when you have today's in situations like this, and you bring it up to your partner, and they don't respond with the oh, that's good, oh, good job, I'm glad to see that, but rather that's all, that's it. You need to be making more. You need to do more. Despite the fact you pay the bills, despite the fact you cover your half of everything, despite the fact that you are doing just fine, you need to get the fuck out of the relationship. So at least I'm out of that. But I apologize for no webcam right now. This is like 8:20 here. There's no lights. Recording at this time is impossible for the webcam. I don't exactly remember the point I was at here, but I know I was mentioning the fact of what optimizers do, what you can take advantage of when you're like looking at attacking the winning crew. Oh, actually, because I've been so long, I can just refresh this and BAM! It's in the account now. What else was I going to say? Oh, another thing, because I know I get questions because I don't use projections and stuff, or necessarily like that. What I do is when I look at the 5 guys in each team, I just rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not in preferred order that I want to get them, although it can look like that. But I rank them based on how they perform, kill death ratio plus assists, like averagely, like who's normally number 1, who's normally number 2, who's normally number 3. If you can normally get the guys who are averaging 1, 2, and 3, regardless of what position they usually end up being, outside of your captain, because you do kind of have to nail your captain. That's going to help tremendously. When I look at only my lineups, you can see that as I stated in the Discord, I always go 100% on a captain. This one just happened to be Searson. But these are all the lineups, and just notice I just can't believe this ownership. It's like it seems to be even more so in Counter-Strike, that even good teams, depending on what their price is, because most optimizers are going to try and force in, or not force in, but like you're not going to run an optimizer, which I would suggest you do this, but most people don't run an optimizer for Counter-Strike and then set the min salary low enough to get some of these lineups. I wish the Roto-Grinders extension ran here, although I might. Let me go ahead and look at something. Hold on. Sorry, I had to bring up SaberSim on the left side. What I normally do, especially because if you notice how low, now yet again this is just me knowing that JDC is a good player, Nico is a fantastic player. He's new. All these guys are pretty much new to 00 Nation. But what I would suggest you do for esports is set the min salary at like 40,000. Like I know that's like fucking nuts. But like for this one, after I went in my rules and I said everything that I wanted to and made it work with Searson and fitting in all the other guys, I gave it. I just tell SaberSim to optimize it not optimize it, but have min salary at 40,000. So it's like $10,000 between the 50 and the 40. And I ran 229 lines, or it made 229 lineups for me. And I go through and I look at them and stuff. And once I find the ones that I want, I end up running with them. But I wanted to show you, so like lineup number 12, as long as it should follow what SaberSim has listed as 12 here, this is a, oops, let me make sure. This is $46,000 left, so $4,000 left over. 11 is 44,400. 10 is 45,200. 9 is 44,400 again. 43,600 for 8, and then 7, the winning lineup had on here. This should be 45,200, but maybe it's not. Whatever. I don't necessarily care about fixing it that way. You can count whatever this is, but I know this is not near 50,000. But yeah, I just wanted to make this video and just give some feedback. I know it's a niche sport, but a lot of the principles and stuff can easily be used for NFL Showdown, for NBA Showdown, for F1 and NASCAR. And I think it's things that I think everything that I mentioned here are things that people should do. Lastly, I want to talk about process, because a lot of people are just results oriented. Okay, they're very much where did I finish today? What happened today? What's going on? And then if they don't cash, they just get fucking pissed off and quit or whatever. You need to have two things in this, and I don't mean to sound brash, because I do not have an unlimited amount of income. You know what I'm going to do with this money? I'm taking out 1,300 of it, because I had already budgeted $1,000 in for this Daytona weekend. So thankfully I don't have to deposit that and put that in, but I'm going to leave 1,000 in this, and hopefully I don't have to redeposit for a while. I'm just going to roll that money back into, just like a business. You take money and then you put it directly into the business. That's just what I do. I withdraw some, and then I just keep the other stuff in the account. So I'm not saying I'm like rich or anything, because I'm certainly not at 25. Although thank you for supporting me on Patreon and helping me with bills and everything. You need to be able to push through the results that don't equal money. I know that sounds stupid, but this is very similar to the stack from the back mentality that I have, and this is the exact same thing. This is the exact same process from one contest to another. I just happen to do 12 lines here, but this is the exact same process. The same approach I made here that didn't cash, because this is all $10 entries, so this is $80, so I threw away $65 on this one. Okay, this is the exact same process I ran here and did not make any fucking money here. But I watched these games, I watched what happens in the scoring, I watched how people built lineups, and I said, you know what, I am very happy with how I approach this contest. I'm going to do it again. I'm okay with it. I'm not fooling myself into it. Like, there's a difference between you got a bad break and you understand what happened, or you can see what happened to the contest to where you didn't cash, and you could see what would happen to make you cash. And there's just somewhere like you were just having a bad time with, which, like, same with me. You know, I'm trying MLB and stuff like that, and some nights I know exactly what I did wrong, and some nights I'm like I just got beat on stuff and things like that. So you need to be able to identify what's a good result, even if the result doesn't necessarily equal money, and just what is a bad process. If you guys want a process talk or anything like that, feel free. I'm sure we can talk about that. But it's really just being able to survive this type of stuff. Because if you go through multiple times of, throwing $65 away and whatever that is, or like, if these 12 lineups today don't cash, I'm out 120. That's not breaking the bank, but it's certainly, I can't do that for like a month straight. That's not going to be fun at all. That's, we're getting really expensive really fast. But you need to be able to just keep swinging it until stuff hits, and like, all the days that end up like this are taken care of and more whenever you have just days like this. And this is just Counter-Strike. Same thing can be with NBA, MLB, NASCAR. Like, it's that's why I like GPPs, because you just make all your money back and then some. It makes up for all the bad low points and dips and valleys and stuff. I think that's mainly it. As I said, I was on a roll, really hitting through stuff, and I think I hit a lot of things, but got interrupted, and then we're just here like several hours later, and I wanted to at least finish this and everything, and hopefully this helps you out, and not just for Counter-Strike, but maybe for some other contests and things like that. And I will see you guys in the next video, and thanks for being here and listening, and I'll talk to you guys later.